Hello, hello, stellar community. My name is Tyler. We are here with another Stellar Shop Talk, number 4, I believe. Today we've got a real special guest, unlike all the other ones, which, were mediocre. What? No, I'm just kidding. We've got Steve Walker from Task.io, Blue Marble. I have really enjoyed the conversations that I've had in the past with Steve. Super smart, business-minded man. He's actually won the SCF before. Typically, his time zones don't line up, right? He's on the other side of the world, our Thailand guy. But Steve, I understand you're in the States right now.
Yeah, I'm currently a few hours south of you in New Orleans, or Norlands, as I should correctly say.
Let's go. Very nice. Gumbo, yes or no?
Gumbo, yes. Gumbo, good. And I'm back here after 30 years absence to go and check out some tunes and some music and walk down Bourbon Street and remember when I was 18 years old and doing karaoke at about 4 a.m. at a place called Cat's Meow down Bourbon Street. I don't know if it exists anymore, but yeah.
That's like your grand re-entrance.
Well, all I can say, it was a good job they didn't have, smartphones and Instagram around that time.
Yeah, very nice.
Things could have been different.
Could have been a different, yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Could have been on America's Got Talent. But instead, you're running businesses. All right, well, we'll get into our conversation in a minute. Just a little bit of introduction in bookkeeping, housekeeping. If you have questions for Steve during this conversation, we'll have the live chat channel open. It's in the live category, just a couple of channels above this one. So if you've got questions or discussion topics, be sure and leave those in live chat. We'll have some questions there at the end. This session is also recorded, so we'll be posting a link to that if you're not able to catch the whole thing, or after you realize just how brilliant Steve is and you need to share this recording with colleagues, friends. There will be the opportunity to do that. Steve, let's jump right into it. Let's hear a little bit about your background, what it is you're working on. You're an entrepreneur, CEO, founder of several different companies, enterprises, and have done some really interesting things over the years. Would love to hear in your own words the journey that got you to where you are today.
Well, first of all, thanks. Thank you very much for inviting me on. It's a real pleasure to be able to talk to you about all this stuff. And I hope I have some information that can be useful to other people. I mean, I was just lucky to, I suppose, have or still do, but my dad forced me when I was 10 years old. We had this family story where I wanted to get this really expensive remote control car called a Tamiya, which back in the day was a very exciting thing to have. And all the kids at school bought them, and my dad said to me, I said, I want to buy this Tamiya car. He said, well, I'm not going to buy it for you. It's way too expensive. But what I will do is we're going on holiday for 3 weeks, and I will loan you the money so that you can go and buy these birds that your uncle has been trying to sell at a market, which you wind up at the back and you sort of send off and they flap around. And I'll lend you the money so you can go and buy these birds and sell them on holiday. So at 10, 11 years old, had these birds that we packed into the suitcases and went off on holiday on Portugal. And we have these kind of Super 8 videos from the 1980s where we're sitting around, me, my little brother and little sister, and we're selling these birds on the beach. And I ended up with like sort of 300 quid. The remote control car was about 120, 130 pounds. And I said to my dad, check out all my cash. This is brilliant, And he went, okay, well, you owe me £100. So I gave him that. I said, look, I've got this £200. He said, and he grabbed this cash off me. He said, wait one sec. And he said, that's for your brother, that's for your sister, and that's for you. And it was this lovely experience that I got given early around the whole kind of world of entrepreneurship in terms of, hey, when you want stuff, you got to go and make it happen. And also, you're not doing it on your own. You're doing it with other people around you. And I was so fortunate to have this really early experience. It was lovely.
Wow.
But
fascinating.
But that's, I mean, in terms of I don't want anyone to fall asleep, but in terms of a kind of quick, my kind of journey was in the 90s. The 90s got split into two phases. There was, for me, the naughty 90s, which was the first half, where I was in Manchester, where all the club scenes were going off, and we had lots of fun. The kind of entrepreneurial world then was setting up club nights, and we were running club nights and having lots of fun running those sort of businesses. That was great. I then had a horrible experience when I was about 27. I didn't join the 27 club, but I did do the classic when I pretty well went bankrupt. And I had to go with my tail between my legs and go and stay with my family, which was kind of, it was not great for your self-esteem. And put the CV out and get a proper job, which I did. And I got a kind of foot in the door job working at IBM on the support desk, which is, basically the worst job in the world. I worked out that the corporate life was never going to be for me, and was very lucky for the second half of the 90s to find myself working in a company called the London Internet Exchange, known as the Links. And, this is early internet architecture. Well, they're a neutral peering exchange. I think they're still around now. And pre-Links, all the traffic in the UK would go across the US to get exchanged between different ISPs and get sent back. So, you have these localized exchange points. I suddenly found myself with very little experience. I've been into computers from an early age, but I was part of an engineering team that was configuring and putting together. It was kind of gigabit Ethernet at the time, and fiber was coming in, and which doesn't sound very sexy now, but at the time this was absolute cutting edge. And it was amazing. You're like, you could geek out by plugging your laptop during a maintenance windows. You could plug into the same switches and the switching systems that the ISPs were using, and officially have the fastest internet connection in the UK. So that was brilliant. I mean, it was such a great experience working with engineers and sharpening up, I suppose, tech skills. But that then led to moving to Barcelona and realizing, getting my mojo back and saying, right, let's start making businesses again, which 2003 happened, setting up a firm that outsourced services back to the UK. And that was a funny experience because we were doing websites and database development. And customers would come in, they would say, hey, we want a website. And you go, okay, cool. And they say, well, we don't want to pay very much for it. And we're like, okay, fair enough. Well, we could go off the shelf. And they're like, okay. And we say, do you have a logo? Nope. Have you got a domain? Nope. Have you got anything? No. And long story short, we'd find that we were pretty well creating businesses for people. And I was going, Jesus, we're like, my thing at the time was saying, we're like the donkeys who's carrying around everyone else's gold, because we've got these people coming to us. We're setting up their businesses for them. They give us some, crappy contract. And then we've got to go and hunt for the next customer. So we've got to get into something around, recurring revenue and the SaaS model. And we were lucky that we had some customers who were in the recruitment space who told us about something called job posting, which is recruitment agents. They have an advert, they need to send it out to lots of job boards. They want to go to Monster and Indeed and all these places and LinkedIn, etc. And it's a simple bit of software. Well, not simple, but it has a simple mission, which is you put in your advert, it sends it out to all these multiple places, and then people apply, and you create a central pipeline for the applicants to come back in, and you can rank them and you can communicate with them. So we very, very naively came to market, and we got to market 2007, which something was, really, really basic. And we did it completely naively. We didn't understand that market at all, the recruitment space. But we got some traction, and we got in there in the UK. And that business was interesting. It was 14 years. We actually sold it last year to a company called Compono in Australia, which was frankly unprecedented given the situation that we had with COVID at the time. And that, they are a great company to be working with now, where they're taking our kind of petulant teenager of a business, and they're bringing it into their company of 180 people and growing it out. So that's brilliant. And I guess, again, the game of two halves, which we described in the 90s of, it also happened with the Idabu business. It's 14 years. The first 7 years, it was very lifestyle. I was very into Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week, thinking about how do I design a business which, it's about the lifestyle, make the business work for you. That was what dominated my thinking in the first 7 years. And then the second 7 years, it was, we did a couple of investment rounds, we formalized things, we brought in a board, and that, helped really educate me in terms of, I guess, overall business practice, where at the beginning it's absolutely gritty. When I started that business, it was trying to pay salaries on your credit card sometimes because you didn't have the cash. It was all the classic startup business mayhem. And then at the end of the business, it was, hey, we've got a formalized board. We're having board meetings. We're thinking about how do we exit this business? And you've got to start planning your exit, 2, 3, 4 years before you actually do it to make sure the business is in the right shape. And so I was lucky enough to find a business partner who would manage that business, and that set the stage for me to be free over the past 4 or 5 years, which has brought me into the Stellar community and the work that we're doing in blockchain.
Wow, what an interesting way to arrive at crypto and blockchain. I've always really appreciated your perspective and emphasis on the people that you work with and viewing business building less about making loads of money and more about building a community of friends that you're working and building on something that you care about with. So this very holistic approach to business that I find very refreshing, where work is just kind of an extension of your life and you want to enjoy your life and do things that are meaningful with people that you like. So I'd like to kind of transition a little bit and dive a bit more into how you've achieved that, kind of the philosophy that's guided you, and maybe most specifically, how you're finding the people that you work with. And as you're building a company and building out a business, you have to hire people. You have to get people to help you do the thing. You can't, as a founder, you can't build the whole thing yourself. So eventually you're going to have to start splitting out and finding people to believe in what you're doing. Can you walk us through kind of your philosophy and your thought process in how you build a business of people and not just a business that makes money?
It's a good question because they obviously interrelate. And I think that when you look at yourself in terms of what you want to do and where you want to get to, you have to look at your own strengths and weaknesses. I know that my strength is in the early stage of the business. It's, hey, we've got an idea, we want to get it to market. I'm not very good at the process stuff, and what you do is you step aside, you bring someone in that would CEO when you get to a stage of, hey, it's all about scale. How do you fit in a way that best suits the organization? It's not about being the boss. It's about creating a healthy organism that benefits everyone in there. I mean, the weird, is obviously fantastic to exit the business last year because it completed a loop. You join a club, which for me is really important, that you did start something, you did go through that, and you did get to a point of an exit, and that's brilliant. But the biggest buzz, and it seems weird, but perhaps not, but the biggest buzz I ever had with the business was when a guy called Bart, he came up to me and he said, hey, I just bought a flat. And I was like, wow, and we talked about it. And it was, this is not a big flat. He's not, it's not kind of a speedboat boat house in Miami. He got a flat. And I was like, wow, we create a business which is now looking after people. Mm-hmm. And that is the biggest buzz. I mean, when you create a business, you get to hang out with the people you want to hang out with. You can create any business that you want. You get to define your culture, whatever you feel that culture should be. And you get to create wealth that will look after people's families and let them grow. And we had we've been going through the I guess handover process with Compono. We had a tech meeting. This is quite strange. I mean, we had a tech meeting where our tech team were meeting their tech team, and the person who had worked with the business the least amount of time, I think, was 8 years. And quite a few of the tech team of the old business have been there. I mean, one guy, Arico, I've worked with him for like 15 years. And, you know, if you look at the normal tech turnover, that's obviously, you know, totally, so anyway, it goes back to, what are you creating? Well, I think if you can create a family, you see yourselves as a family together, making stuff happen. I know that someone would come in and say, yeah, you can't do that when you've got a company of 200 or 1,000 or 5,000. I get that. You have to take a different approach. But the beautiful thing about when you start a business is you get to hang out with who you want to hang out with. You get to create wealth for people that you care about. And you can create this culture which just fits how you want to live your life. And that's the, you know, when you think about money, I mean, my feeling about money is we don't really need that much money. You need to master money. That's quite easy. But I don't know. I don't sit in the camp of all I think about is trying to create more wealth. I sit in the camp of let's create good business which looks after people. And if we do that, and if we're useful, I'm pretty sure the wealth will take care of itself. And it's, yeah.
Can you speak a little bit? So, like, when this is a very exciting business model for me, where you focus really on the people in your company. Like, you need to solve a legitimate problem, and we can get to like how you identify what those are. But one thing that has been a struggle is, like, I have friends and I have people that I work with, and when those lines cross, sometimes it can be like, do I really want to hire my friend? Like, I don't want to damage the relationship that we have in the off chance I like have to fire them. So how do you, as you're starting to look and identify, like, who do I actually want to work with and who do I just want to, you know, go out for drinks with in the evening? Like, how do you identify and ease into this concept of hiring good people or identifying who you actually want to work with? Because I think that can be challenging. And a lot of our audience are kind of at this cusp of starting something big, where you've got a founder or somebody with an idea or a technically minded person that will start something, but will eventually need to go and find people to work with. What does that process look like really early on for you?
Well, the one thing that I definitely found, I mean, you know, it's easy to say, hey, we've had the team together this long and it all worked out fine. But actually, when you go back in time, if I think about how I would manage the business early on, I would be embarrassed to go back to some of the meetings. And I think early days, often it was about, hey, you got a team. Let's imagine we're jigsaw pieces. Well, you can change people to be different shaped jigsaws, jigsaw pieces. And that typically just does not work. I mean, there are people that are hungry for change. And there's also a lot of people that are, you know, this is what I do, this is what I want to do. And I think when you look at the team, you have to see that you have this jigsaw of people, and it's trying to move people to a position that makes them feel energized and happy. We touched on this when we were talking before. There is a book which, for anyone starting a business, they must read, which is called E-Myth Revisited. And it goes into the reasons why most startups fail, and it has a structured approach for you to take to build a startup business in the right way. A kind of synopsis of how it sees a startup is that you work for a company. The typical startup founder's journey is you work for a company, your boss does stuff, you look at what the company does, you probably don't like your boss, and you go, you know what, I can do this better than you. And you go off and you start your own version of the company, something like that. So you do that, and you're really, really good at what you do, but it's just you. And then you hire someone. When you hire someone, they're not as good as you, they don't know how to do stuff, and your startup company starts to suffer and either goes out of business, or you fire that person and it's just you again. And eventually you run out of steam and your startup will fail. So the E-Myth model, what it says is you've got to look at your startup as if it was, think about what it will look like in 5 years' time. You're going to have your CXO team, and what does that look like for the type of business that you're in? Are you got your CEO, your CMO, your CFO, COO, et cetera, but you got your marketing execs, you got your sales director, you got your sales execs, and you write what your organization is going to be looking like in the in the coming 3 to 5 years. Have a complete map, and in each of those positions, write the role definitions for them. Let's say now that you're looking to take our first example. Well, when you're the founder, you have all those positions. But when someone comes in, you're going to recruit someone to come in, you have a real clear definition where you say, okay, the first person I've got to bring in here is going to be a sales director, because we've got to be pumping our sales. So there's a sales director, there's a role. And when they come in, not only are they the sales director, but they're going to take over the sales exec role too. And it becomes very clear for you what the responsibilities are as you straddle multiple roles, as you build up a startup. And it becomes easy for you to identify gaps and how you should build out your company as you go forward. So that the EMIR Revisited book it's a great read, and it's a really good way of structuring your startup.
Excellent, nice. It's a very helpful insight for kind of looking at that initial scale beyond solopreneuring. So you've got a couple businesses you're working on right now. You've obviously had all kinds of ideas rolling around in your head over the years. How do you kind of land on what's your process for taking shower thoughts and identifying this is actually something that I want to scale? What's the process that you're using to identify, try something, give some level of assurance that this is worth pursuing, and at what level is it worth pursuing? Just kind of take us through a journey on how you identify which problems should actually be solved, or which ideas you should pursue.
It's a good question. I mean, the first thing is that there's a relation between you as a person. So I am, I'm not a proper developer, but I understand code. I've got a technical background, and I like the commercials. So what I am good at is putting together teams and quickly getting something to market. The danger is that you can just get stuff to market because you think it's a good idea. And because of that, I found that I work best when I'm partnered up with someone who is less technical, more commercially focused. And with the old Idaboo business, it's still a business partner, a guy called Martin, who MDs that business. And then with Task and the Blue Marble, obviously it's Matt Rickard, who you know. And Matt we have a great relationship because I can talk about, hey, we could do this, we could do that. And Matt's anchoring us to, yep, that's great, but we've got to go and talk to the customer, and we've got to get the customers to confirm that this is what the market wants. And so I suppose I address my perhaps slightly kind of manic desire to create stuff, and I kind of balance it out with the right business partner for me. So, to answer your question, unless you have a real leap of, you got different startups, and you got a startup that says, hey, we are not about revenue. We're about our metric is we're going to acquire users, and we have an investment path going forward where, we bring in investors, but the value is around the data and the value is around the users. And that is one model. You've also got the model where you say, no, we've got to be cash positive, and we've got to, we've got a bit of seed investment. We've got to make sure that we that we control our destiny by becoming cash positive. We've got to make revenue. And I think in the second case, more in the first case, you can perhaps be a little bit more visionary, where you say, hey, this is what we're creating. It's going to take time to build it up. I think in the second one, you've got to get very close to the customer. You've got to listen to what they want. I think the jobs to be done mechanism, that's really important. That's a great thing to do. Get in front of people and do the jobs to be done analysis. That's a great book to read. It's making sure that you're really solving a problem for people, and something that we have got caught out by is you have to, I think jobs to be done gets you to ask customers in the right way so that you don't bias their answers. Because when you go and speak with your mate and you say, hey, I'm going to create this and it's going to do that, they immediately are biased because they don't want to upset you and say that your idea is crap. You've got to find a way of if people don't like what you're doing, if it's wrong, and the definition of wrong is, hey, a little pivot to it makes it really right, then you've got to talk to people in a way where you can get that feedback. And I think that's really important. So, solving real problems and not it's very useful to analyze, are you a vitamin or a painkiller? Are you a nice to have, or are you absolutely essential? And what's the compelling event that's going to link with your product? If someone has to do a report every year and you come out and you say, hey, it's costing you whatever, $10K to do this report, we've got a way of automating it and it costs you $2K and you save a load of time. There's a compelling event, it's a report, it happens at a certain time of the year, everything is easy. But if you come out with something where it's a bit more fluffy, and you're clearly going to be something gets cut from the budgets as soon as there's a downturn, then you need to be careful. That means you're a vitamin style product, and that can be quite dangerous.
Yeah, but to me, it's as I'm evaluating projects myself, so much of solo entrepreneur, even just serial entrepreneurship, is you build as a hobby. You love building things. You have these personal problems or these little quirks, and you're like, well, I'm an engineer. I could whip up something to solve this really quick. And the assumption is that if I have this problem, everybody's probably got this problem, or at least a sufficient number of people. I should start building for this. And so you start, you build it out, you build out some features, you start talking about it. You might get a few people interested, and then, but you've kind of always been building out as a hobby, and you haven't kind of come from we need to start with actual problems versus I'm just technical and I love solving things technically, and I'm going to work on caching and time to screen and security metrics, and I'm going to be analyzing everything technically because that's what I'm good at. And then you start getting your first few customers or little bits of interest, and then now you've got 5, 10, 20, 100 additional people that are also going to start asking for features and changes, and you're going to have this sort of tremendous focus on tech and improving the technology and adding features, and pretty soon your solution to a problem that was very simple at first is now a really complex, hard to manage product, because you were just always throwing code at problems instead of just trying to scale this very first relatively achievable solution to a small problem. And so this is something that I've been learning a lot as I've been building out more products, is instead of continuously throwing tech at users to try and get more people on board, to really think about, how can I scale the marketing side? How can I find and get this a legitimate solution to a legitimate problem in front of way more people, because tech doesn't solve that problem. You need to figure out how to get it in front of people, and that's a marketing problem. But it's hard because we're not marketers; we're technical. And it's like, from your perspective, right? You're a little bit less on the code side and more on the business side. What would be kind of your advice or recommend to people that just keep throwing tech at a growth problem?
If the tech developers and sorry, explain the question. You mean that you just keep adding more layers of code to try and find a problem to solve?
We got 100 users and they're all asking for different features, and we're like, our roadmap is always just new feature improvements. Instead of, like, there's not a whole lot of concept of how do we get this product, which, I mean, you start having people on board that are immediately going to start asking for customizations. And so you think, oh, our product's not actually that good, so we need to add new tech, instead of, well, maybe you could find 1 million people that are just like you, or 100,000 people that are just like you that don't really need additional functionality. But now that you've made the product so complex, a bunch of people are never going to approach your product because now it's too much. You've customized it for 100 different use cases by just throwing more tech instead of finding more marketing. Is that right? How do you look at growth when you have a product that you feel maybe is missing functionality, but maybe it's a marketing problem, maybe it is a tech problem.
I'd probably answer the question from a 100% non-technical point of view, excuse me, which is, if the conversation here is startups, and let's assume that you want a startup that's going to scale, and let's assume that you're going to need some advice and investment as you go along. There's a brilliant quote I really like, which is, if you're after investment, ask for advice, and if you want advice, ask for investment in your business. There is a massive link between mentorship and the right investors who come into your business. And the only reason they're going to invest in your business, well, there's a few reasons. One, they're going to like you and they're going to trust you. Two, you're going to have demonstrated some form of traction. And really, the only way you're going to demonstrate traction is you're going to have to focus on something. So to answer that dilemma around the code is when you're looking at the feature creep and what's going on, then you need to think about it in context of where you're trying to get to, because the investor road journey is very, very clear, and you cannot game the system. We listen to unicorn and media excited stories of people that built and exited in 3 years. These are absolutely the freaks, and it's just not the way it goes typically. It's very much a winning the lottery approach to building business, and you're going to be disappointed if you go in like that. So it's a very simple step process, and you can't bring in investment unless you prove traction. And that means you've got to, depending on what you define traction, which is either going to be user numbers or it's going to be revenue, typically, you've got to make that happen. And so you want to just meditate on, who are the people that we're talking to who are going to be giving us, generating the revenue that we can then go to the investing market, and they're going to look at this and say, hey, that's great. We want to support you, because we can see how you're kind of the flywheel, as they say. We want to make your flywheel spin faster. We can scale this up. So I think you kind of got to look at it from that commercial way, because otherwise, just developing stuff will kill the business. One thing that is interesting for everyone listening now is there's never been a better time to start a business in blockchain, in my opinion, than right now. The crash that's happening is not great, and anyway, people that have lost money, obviously that's horrible. But if you take out that aspect, we are going to be going through a bit of a winter coming up. And for starting a business, that's brilliant, because it means vitamins are out. You have to create a pain-killing product in order to survive. And if you do that, or to get started, and if you do that when the good times come again, which they will, you're going to be absolutely set. So the bottom falling out the NFT market, we're involved in NFTs. I welcome the negative, the kind of negativity around NFTs, because I think those are the problems to be solved around NFTs, in terms of turning these certificate and vehicles into something that has clear value, and where you're protecting the buyers and educating the creators about how to bring value to the market. And that's a big challenge we're going to have in the NFT world. How do you do that? And NFTs, in my opinion, will proliferate into all sorts of different areas and use cases, but they'll only do it when the correct legal constructs are put in place to regulate the asset that they're connected with. So times are going to be tough in the markets, but also if you can now weather this storm and come out with a good idea now, you will be absolutely set, and it's a great time to start a business.
Could not agree more. I think the seasons of summer are nice, right? Because it brings a lot of attention and interest and familiarity, but it also just brings so much noise, and it becomes very difficult to know what's legitimate, who are the players that are going to be here for the long haul, who's building businesses, and who's just a cloud machine. And it takes these times of kind of pulling back and more serious consideration for the products that exist out there, the businesses that are building, and the entrepreneurs to really cull out from the herd those that are building legitimate businesses, are here for the long haul, are interested in actually improving people's lives, kind of building along those terms that you have mentioned, businesses that last and teams that are healthy and models that can sustain through seasons of less hype. They're necessary. They're always going to come. And I think they're honestly very exciting as it provides that opportunity for entrepreneurs to kind of have a fresh start, a little bit less competition. And if you've got a good idea, an actual problem, and are willing to put in the effort to scale and grow slowly, you have the opportunity to succeed in ways that are more difficult because there's just so much noise when everything is positive.
Yeah, I agree.
So I'd like to take a little bit of time before we get to questions, which call out to the live chat channel for anybody that has questions for Steve or myself around stuff that we've discussed. Be sure to drop that into the live chat. But we'd want to make sure we spend some time talking about what you've actually got going on right now, either with Task, Blue Marble, how they're interrelated, and kind of where you've been so far and what the roadmap holds. I think building a business right now, like everybody's kind of hunkering down and really trying to consider the fundamentals. So I think it would be pertinent to kind of think through from your perspective, how are you thinking through the next few months, year, as you plan the roadmap for the blockchain-based businesses that you're running right now?
Yeah, great. Well, we have used the same tech stack. I mean, when we talk about, I guess, developer efficiencies and how to get to market quickly, we were when we were looking at how to develop out Task, we saw NFTs as assets that were going to be very important to what we're doing, and as we did that, we also realized that the Task brand was containing too much in terms of what it does, and because of that, we have created the Blue Marble as a brand because it's really easy to describe what it does. It's about NFTs. It's using layer 2 smart contracts to split royalty payments. Typically, it's about a creator who wants to support a social cause. They can create assets, which then send portions of the revenue or 100% of the revenue through to the causes they would like to support. And the secondary trades on those assets are also able to either provide lifetime royalties back to the creators and or send further finances through to the social enterprises they support. So that's really simple. When you talk about the Blue Marble, it's a very easy brand. We like that clarity. The mission around the Blue Marble actually is we are starting with some digital artwork, but we are interested in how you bring legal constructs into the NFT world. I have an opinion, and I think Stellar is really well set up for this. I have quite a strong opinion that the NFT world will very quickly become commoditized, because if we have basic standards as to how NFT should be, that we'll see there'll be a race to providing commodity code, so to speak, or code services around NFTs or the chains that do that. Stellar, low cost, fast, is perfectly set up to compete effectively in that environment. So that for me is really good news. But the value of the NFT marketplaces, I think, will be in the services that they offer over the top. And so my example of where I would like to see Blue Marble get to as quickly as possible is that we're really interested in how we can help communities and use digital assets to onboard people into the investment space in a way that protects them and is sensible. So my example I like to use is you've got a skate park, and you've got a local famous graffiti artist. The issue is the developers want to take down the skate park and use it, develop buildings on there. Community want to save it. So we're looking to build vehicles where we bring in the finances to acquire that land. We can create an NFT which has the land rights baked into that NFT, and the image for the NFT, which is actually just a cover image. It's not really about the value of the NFT being the image, but the graffiti artist is bringing in something. So there's a good visual representation of the NFT, but the NFT is all about those land rights for the skate park. And then you can fractionalize that and you can offer it out to the community, and you can say do an issuance of, or a fraction, 1,000 fractions of that NFT. And that means kids could be investing, or their parents can be investing in something for the community, and they can get in for, say, $100 or $500, something like that. So for me, the reason I get excited about that is we're living in a world where land and housing is going up. It's very hard for young people to get a foothold on the property ladder. It allows you to have a sense of community. You're looking after communal space together. It bonds a community together. It's not just about the land ownership. You also bring in that digital art representation. You got the digital art. You're a co-owner of this art piece from a famous artist that would like to support. And we've seen a lot of examples where there's communal assets that are required, which could benefit from fractionalized ownership. And of course, with land value going up, if you move out the area or you just want to trade it, we don't have any legal fees. Why use an NFT for that? Well, answer to the question is, once all the legalities are wrapped up in the initial issuance, if people want to trade it, it can be done so without the friction of lawyers having to get involved. Because, so that for me is a model. I'm not saying it's a perfect model, but what I am saying for us, as we are going through the use cases of NFTs, I'm very excited about how I can see them being used in these different areas. And it's all about, baking in these legal constructs to turn something where, if I'm speaking, with my dad, who is not a crypto enthusiast, but he's very interested in technology, I need to be able to sit down with him and explain what's the value proposition and why does this make sense. And when I talk about the skate park example, for me, I think I can do that. And so that's Blue Marble, which is NFTs, but investment assets that are socially or environmentally useful. Over in the task, it's been very interesting because going back to how you build a business, I think we fell afoul of being a vitamin as opposed to a painkiller in terms of our early business plans. Our business plan was that it was going to be a SaaS business and that we would build up a lot of subscriptions. I like that business because it's really lovely to have monthly subscriptions that just keep whizzing away. It's a great way to build a business. What we're finding with Task is, because there tends to be quite a lot of custom setup when you go into deal with a problem, is we're ending up with a smaller number of much larger customers and starting to partner and work on projects with them. So I think probably the most exciting one is Biochar Live. We're now part of a business plan. Their mission is to take smallholder farmers throughout Asia and Africa. For people that don't know, there's horrible smoke pollution problems. Fields, instead of being, there's open field burning, so fields are set on fire. We have crazy pollution out in Thailand, for example, where Matt lives and I live. So the new model, which is a really lovely, neat model, and where blockchain really helps, is you have a smallholder farmer. Instead of burning the field, they are educated how to make biochar. The biochar, which doesn't create the smoke, is then sold to the organization Biochar Life, who then bury it. And when they bury it, that's sequestering the carbon in the ground, or they can put it into animal feed. But when they bury it, then there's a carbon removal. We have an STS token, so that's the asset that's on Stellar. And Task is being used. We collect all the data that proves that this is happening. All the different data points that show that this biochar was created by this farmer at this location, buried here, and then using this to create a digital asset which can be purchased by large corporations who want a carbon offset. And this is interesting because Biochar Life have a great business plan, and Task is now a part of that business plan. And so, in terms of how we have evolved the business, the Task business seems to be focusing much more on these larger use cases where we're wrapped up as a part of the overall business plan by the partner that we're working with. And we've got a couple of other examples that I won't go into now unless you would really like me to. But I think, yeah, the Biochar Life is great because their mission is to scale out to 1 million farmers. They already have a pretty significant footprint with farmers they interact with in Africa. But the question is how we can push in the liquidity to, put for the education and then production of biochar.
Super fascinating. I love the different aspects of partnerships, right? So you're not trying to do every piece of this. You just provide an essential piece of someone else's bigger picture. And I think that's a big part of blockchain, right? Blockchain, it needs to be a piece of something else. And so when you're building a blockchain company, it's just a tool. It's an API. It's a feature that will unlock some sort of solution to a problem or make something that already exists faster, cheaper, more accessible, more scalable. But you have to think in those terms of who's doing something out there that I could improve. And I think Task has done a really good job of that. And even Blue Marble now trying to be a first mover in that space of looking beyond hype and the noise in the space and trying to find the signal there and creating an essential business component that others could implement into their own solutions. Super interesting.
Something to add as well, because we have going down the road, as you always do with the business, and there's nothing to be ashamed about when I say this, which is we've made lots of mistakes, and you're learning as you go and you're refining your process, and that's so important. It's part of the journey. One of the key shifts that I saw with Task, where I was like, wow, that's how you go from being, stop being the vitamin, that's how you become the painkiller, is actually when you get serious about what is an asset and how do you protect the value of an asset. Because with Stellar, obviously it's lovely that we can all go and create a new asset, and we can say what a lot of people are doing is they say, hey, we're going to do a carbon offset asset, and we've issued 1 million. Don't worry, you can trust us. If they go out to market, it means it's an offset and you can purchase it. And there's a lot of large issuance done. Trust us. And early days we would be doing that, where we create a custom asset for a customer and issue lots out. Key shift that I think that was so useful was we said, right, when we create this asset, which is going to be around carbon removal, we will issue 0. And the only time that stuff can get issued is when there is a offset. The data is collected and that's all bundled in, and we use we make sure that data can be verified with the transactions we put into the Stellar blockchain. When you can absolutely mint something of value against a ton of CO2 sequestered, that's when you issue the asset. So when you go and look at the STS token, it doesn't have a large issuance yet, and that's good because every transaction that issues a token out, you can go and look at the data that was used to create that issuance. And I love that, because when we talk to people now and saying, how can we help you to set up, lots of people want blockchain assets. It's like, okay, but that's great, but how are you going to put value into the asset? What, how do we protect the value? And for us, having a very strict only mint against value, it seems simple to say, but I feel it's really revolutionized the value that we're providing to customers.
Yeah, fascinating. Let's move to it. We don't have many questions. I do have one here from Rahim asking if you've had any problems with government building a business that uses blockchain. What has been your experience building a blockchain business in regards to regulatory concerns and considerations?
Not as yet. I mean, we are just keeping an eye on what we do. We will need to, with the NFT work that I've described, we will need to look at how we fit into regulations and go through that process. I guess as someone that's just trying to get a startup going, I think I've had so many conversations when people, especially around sales and marketing, there's like, oh, if we do this marketing plan, we could have too many customers than we can deal with. And I'm always like, don't worry about that. It's a great problem to have. So the government aspect is more of a case of get the traction and proactively go and speak with government and make sure that you're tight when it comes to regulations. But we can't afford to spend all our time worrying about regulation without having a business which is going to start washing its face from a revenue point of view. So, early days, until you're starting to do something, until you're starting to make some real noise, I think structure your business so that you're not going to have problems in the future. I mean, don't be naive about it and don't start creating investment packages that could get you into trouble later. But there's a balancing act with these things. I mean, we're having discussions around it. We have investment discussions and partners, and it's an ongoing conversation. So I don't really have a straight question, because there's a balance between get stuff done, get stuff out to market, but do it in a way that's not going to create too many issues later. But at the same time, don't stifle your business because you're overthinking the regulations, because they're changing so quickly.
Right. Yeah. And there's a wealth of cases and projects out there to learn from. It's not completely a black box. Be careful. Behave as you would in any other business, but focus on providing real value to your users and scale, grow.
Yeah. The other sorry, Tyler, I was just going to say, the other thing that's great opportunity here, which I think is important for us all working in the blockchain world, is I know that if we look at the future, the future seems to be, I kind of see blockchain a little bit at the moment as, it reminds me so much of peer-to-peer file sharing. Do you think when Napster came out, it was centralized, government went after it, hey, you can't do this, got closed down. And then the techies went, well, you know what, let's come out with a proper peer-to-peer. We had Kazaa and came out, and people like Metallica suddenly found out that it wasn't possible to shut these networks down, and they had to live with it. What happened then was eventually Spotify comes along and says, hey, well, we've got a new model, and it's not great for the artists, and the music industry is going to just have to deal with it, but this is a new paradigm. And I think our job is to be working, in the future, there will be DAOs, there will be independent assets which are not controlled by people, but there will also be the governments and systems in place who you have to interact with, and there'll be a balancing act between these two worlds. So I think our opportunity as people working in this space is to be open and talk with governments and try to come up with balance that allows everyone to feel confident and create a win-win for all. Because I think out-and-out battle is not healthy. It's about, when you look at government, the role of blockchain in government could be to shrink government over time and create more efficient systems, which, of course, if you take somewhere like the States, is a big conversation point for many countries too. So it's going to be gradual, and I think it's important that we try to work with, as opposed to getting into battles with government, because I don't think that's going to end in a pretty way.
Yeah, I mean, it's a process. Any big change, seismic change, takes time, so we don't deploy utopia. We have it. What is the saying? You eat an elephant one bite at a time.
Yeah.
I've never eaten an elephant. It doesn't sound delicious, but if I was going to eat one, I would probably do it slowly.
Yeah, they're tough.
Yes, very tough. So last question before we shut it down. I think this one's kind of interesting. You mentioned you've made a few mistakes along the way. We all have. Were there any regarding Stellar or blockchain in general? Any blockchain Stellar related mistakes along the way to share?
There's probably lots. I can't. I don't. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any blockchain ones. I think a good closing out point to make, though, is you and I touched on this when we were chatting the other day. Is the definition of luck, and when you're building a startup, what is luck? And there seem to be lucky people around. And of the one thing that I have absolutely learned in building and exiting a SaaS business was always keep the lights on. If you're planning your business, think about things like your variable versus fixed costs. Fixed costs kill business. You take on people, you're all optimistic, you think it's going to be great. You use your cash, you die. If you can keep the lights on, and if you can keep pedaling, as my old business partner and I used to say, we just, when things were getting bad, when it was a 2008 crash, even when COVID hit, we were looking at each other in March 2020 going, could be all over here, and it was tough, but you make decisions quickly to ensure that the lights stay on your business. And the longer those lights stay on, the more chance that you'll just learn something or have a conversation with someone, or the phone will ring and you'll suddenly find that you're one of the lucky people because something great happened. So I really am a very, very strong believer in plan your business so you can think long term. And if you do that, you increase a chance so much of something good happening, and you learn and thrive and create success. So yeah, keep the lights on, and you'll find that you're a much more lucky entrepreneur than one that just gets forced to switch it all down.
All right. Excellent.
Completely didn't answer your question then, but I don't have a good answer off the top of my head.
No, that's blockchain's perfect. Well, thanks so much for joining. Really appreciate the time that you spent. We've got a question here regarding your Blue Marble project and the biochar. So if you can jump into live chat after we close down and maybe share some links to some of the work you're doing.
Right.
That would be super. Any final closing words for our audience here? Things you'd like them to check out, visit, how to get in touch with you, etc.
Always great to talk. I mean, we are part of the Stellar community. We want to build things with other people in Stellar. I'm on Twitter at Steve Walker without an E between the K and the R, and I mean, there's lots and lots to do. As I said earlier, that now is the best time in the world to be building a business when the markets are tanking. And anything that we can do to be supporting people in the Stellar community, let us know. I am shy of Discord in terms of trying not to allow things to interrupt my day, but my email is steve@task.io, and love to speak with anyone anytime.
All right, fantastic. Well, thanks so much for jumping on, Steve. It's always a pleasure. Everyone have a great rest of your day, afternoon, morning, night, and we will catch you all again very soon. Thanks so much for hanging out. We'll see you all. Bye.
Thanks for having me, Tyler. Really appreciate it. 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 appreciated, 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 appreciated,